Well, for more on bombardiers, along with Mexico's and Canada's concerns over NAFTA, I'm joined by Simon Lester. He's a trade policy analyst at the Cato Institute. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you.
So, given the current pace and the tone that we've seen so far for these renegotiations, how optimistic are you that a deal could be reached in March?
Well, I think I'm more optimistic about the NAFTA renegotiation in general than many of my colleagues. I see a lot of the bluster and rhetoric from President Trump and some of his advisors as merely a negotiating tactic. So I'm less concerned than others. By the end of March might be too ambitious. Trade negotiations tend to take longer than people think. This one was originally supposed to be done by the end of the year. That already didn't happen. We've already set the precedent for having delay. I can imagine having another one. President Trump himself already mentioned the prospect of Mexican elections over the summer. So I can see this dragging on a little further than March.
So what do we know about where President Trump currently stands on NAFTA and what the main sticking points are?
We know that today President Trump said it's moving along pretty well. At the same time, he said if it doesn't go well, he'll terminate it. So we don't know. He says different things at different moments. The main sticking points, you mentioned a couple in the introduction. Chapter 19, the special appeals process for trade remedies cases, that's something that the United States says it wants to eliminate. Canada is very attached to it. It's something Canada fought hard for in the original Canada-U.S. trade agreement in the 1980s. So that's one big one. There's the issue of the content required, the North American content required in automobiles in order for them to qualify for the zero NAFTA tariffs. On that, there may be more flexibility. There may be ways to sort of structure this in a way that the car makers in North America can actually meet those new requirements. So those are two of the big ones.
And what about the business communities in the US, Mexico, and Canada? How are they feeling about these renegotiations?
They're nervous. Their perspective is basically do no harm. They're not too upset with the idea in principle of a NAFTA renegotiation, but they worry that the talks will blow up, that the U.S. will withdraw. If it's just a question of modernizing NAFTA, NAFTA is an old agreement. If it's just a question of bringing in all the new provisions we've developed in other trade agreements over the years, that's fine with them. They're happy with it. Just don't mess it up. Don't abandon it. Don't withdraw from it.
Now, in terms of industries, obviously it's different for different countries, whether it's auto or it's agriculture for Canada. But which industries do you think have the most at stake in these talks?
Well, I think you've named the two, autos and agriculture. They're the ones who benefited greatly from the existing arrangements, and they just don't want to see that blown up. So if the U.S. Produces a lot of farm products, sells them to Mexico and Canada, if suddenly they're faced with tariffs on those products and their products have to be sold at higher prices, well, that's a real problem for them. And the auto industry similarly benefits from this sort of internal, they have this integrated production network around North America, and they can make parts in one place, sell it to another place without paying tariffs. If suddenly they have to pay tariffs on all these products, it's going to hurt them in competing with their Asian and European competitors.
And there's certainly a lot of tentacles to this, as we saw with Bombardier, that also brings in the UK and Ireland. And then you also have Canada signing on for this new revised TPP. How does that affect the sort of leverage that's going on then with the NAFTA talks?
It's interesting. I think in a way it's a smart play for Canada. It sort of makes the point to the United States that, hey, we've got other markets. We've got other options. I had wondered sort of how Canada would approach this. Would they be willing to take the risk of aggravating the United States? Is the U.S. upset with them about this? But they must have done some thinking about it and done the calculation and thought this is the best way to ensure that we have markets for our products, that we have trading partners that we can deal with.
And just quickly, in the case of this scenario where NAFTA doesn't work out, what could that mean for opportunities for other huge trade partners, especially China?
China seems like it would be a beneficiary of this if the United States doesn't want to trade, doesn't want to have this kind of trading relationship with Canada and Mexico anymore. China is going to be happy to step in. China and Canada have been feeling each other out whether to negotiate their own trade agreement. So I think China benefits and would be very happy with the United States withdrawing from the world stage so that they can sort of step in and not replace the United States, but just sort of enhance and expand their role.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. Simon Lester there, trade policy analyst at the Cato